The air was thick with the stillness of the night at Kotarakara Taluk Hospital. The dim glow of flickering fluorescent lights washed over sterile white walls, their paint chipped and stained by years of wear. The quiet hum of machines was the only sound accompanying the deep, uneasy silence. Dr. Vandana Das, a young and dedicated 23-year-old house surgeon, was well into her night shift. As part of her medical internship, she had grown accustomed to the long, sleepless hours, serving patients with a kindness that belied the exhaustion painted under her eyes. Her white coat, a symbol of hope and healing, swayed lightly as she moved through the corridors. It was the early hours of May 10th, 2023. The hospital wasn't bustling with activity, but the occasional arrival of patients kept the staff alert. It was around this time that the police arrived, escorting a man with wounds inflicted during a drunken scuffle. His name was Sandeep G., a 42-year-old school teacher with a known history of aggressive behavior. The officers had brought him in for medical treatment, hoping to have his injuries tended to before any legal proceedings began. Vandana greeted them with her usual professionalism, her voice gentle yet firm. She was used to treating patients brought in under police custody, but the unpredictability of the night was something she could never prepare for. The officers stood nearby, their postures relaxed, eyes wandering as if nothing could go wrong. To them, this was just another routine visit. But to Vandana, her duty was to ensure the man's injuries were attended to, regardless of his past or present condition. She instructed Sandeep to sit down and began preparing to clean his wounds. The surgical scissors lay on the metal tray beside her, a tool of healing that would soon become a weapon of unimaginable violence. Without warning, Sandeep's demeanor shifted. His eyes narrowed, darkened by rage and paranoia. Before anyone could react, he lunged forward, seizing the surgical scissors from the tray with alarming speed. His hand moved with a force driven by madness, and the first stab cut through the air before it pierced her flesh. Vandana gasped, the sharp pain tearing through her body. Panic flooded her senses as she stumbled backward, her hands instinctively reaching to ward off the blows. But Sandeep was relentless. The scissors flashed again, plunging into her chest, her arms, her back. The sterile white coat she wore became soaked with blood, her own blood. The lifeblood of a young doctor whose only crime was doing her duty. The officers in the room froze for a split second, paralyzed by the shock of what was unfolding before them. The air filled with frantic screams from the hospital staff, their voices merging into a cacophony of terror. Desperation shattered the silence of the night. It took precious moments for the police to subdue Sandeep, his frenzy only breaking when sheer force and numbers overwhelmed him. By then, the damage had been done. Vandana lay crumpled on the cold floor, her breathing shallow, her vision flickering between consciousness and darkness. Staff members rushed to her side, their hands trembling as they tried to stop the bleeding. Blood pooled around her, staining the floor where she lay. They hurriedly transported her to a hospital in Thiruvananthapuram, the journey a frantic blur of flashing lights and desperate prayers. But the injuries were too severe. Despite the efforts of her fellow doctors, Dr. Vandana Das succumbed to her wounds, her life cruelly cut short by a man's uncontrollable rage. News of her death spread quickly, sparking widespread outrage and sorrow throughout Kerala. Protests erupted as doctors and medical staff took to the streets, demanding better security, demanding justice. Her name became a rallying cry against the unprotected lives of healthcare workers who risk their safety daily to save others. Meanwhile, Sandeep was taken into custody, his expression disturbingly vacant. His arrest brought no comfort, no resolution. For Vandana's family, her friends, and the countless others who saw themselves in her, the grief was an open wound that refused to heal. Dr. Vandana Das had dedicated her life to healing, to caring for others without prejudice or fear. But that night, she became a victim of a system that failed to protect her. Her story, now etched into the collective memory of a grieving community, stands as a heartbreaking testament to the dangers faced by those who serve others. Yet, the question remains, will her sacrifice be the catalyst for real change, or just another name lost in the fog of forgotten tragedies?